Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Michigan plays some of the worst football that I think we've seen Michigan play in a very long time on the road against Illinois. And I think the most frustrating aspect about this performance is all three phases this team didn't look ready to play coming off of a bye week. You look at Sherrone Moore, this Michigan program, that was an inexcusable performance to put on display this afternoon. And I think if you're a Michigan fan, there's a ton that needs to change within this Michigan program. I want to get into a few talking points. One, let's start with the coaching staff. I think more importantly, let's have the conversation about the quarterback position. You know, we've gone through three quarterbacks, started with Davis Warren, went to Alex Orji, went to Jack Tuttle. All three quarterbacks cannot play winning football at the Big Ten level. Now, there's a lot of other things that need to change within this Michigan program, but when you have quarterback play that is that bad, you're not going to win a lot of football games. Is it time to see what true freshman Jadyn Davis can bring to this Michigan offense? I think it certainly is. I think if you're Michigan, what do you have to lose? And I think what makes so much sense about potentially turning to Jadyn Davis is, look, if you're Michigan, you're going to have to do a ton of work in the transfer portal over the next couple of months. You want to know if the quarterback position is one of those spots. So let Jadyn Davis get some playing time. Let's see if he can be a guy or show us that he can be a guy heading into 2025. This is a Michigan team that I think all of a sudden needs their eyes set on how can this thing get fixed in 2025. Want to go over just a few talking points. Many of y'all know I'm a Michigan fan, so I'm gonna stick to my notes here so I don't ramble on. Now, to the Michigan fans, one, y'all have rocked with the boys for a while now. Appreciate the support. Let it fly in the comment section. Y'all don't need to hold back, whether you agree with some of my takes, whether you disagree, whether you just want to unleash some frustrations. I fully get it. This is why I'm doing this episode, to unleash some of my frustrations. So let it fly in the comment section. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. A lot of these things we're going to be talking about for Michigan over the next couple of weeks. Let's start with the coaching staff. And I think it starts with Sherrone Moore. And I don't know if I'm ready to talk about Sherrone Moore. I think he's certainly on the hot seat right now. I mean, he took over a national championship program, and we know they lost a lot of talent. I don't think a lot of Michigan fans expected the same Michigan team that we saw in 2023, a historically good Michigan team. That being said, the drop-off is really mind-boggling for a lot of Michigan fans. So I think first and foremost, Sherrone Moore, that conversation, I think it can happen right now, because what you saw the last couple of weeks is not competitive football for Michigan. I think more importantly, though, I want to take a look at some of the assistants, and let's start with offensive coordinator Kirk Campbell. Kirk Campbell's offense right now, it has no identity. I mean, the only successful plays that Michigan is really operating with is one kind of like misdirection trick plays, or just throwing it up to Colston Loveland. And when you're so one-dimensional, you don't really have an offense that you can lean on. It's really hard to have an offense that can stay on the football field and be competitive. And so you look at Kirk Campbell and say, the reason you can kind of put him on the hot seat a little bit is he's also kind of responsible for the quarterback development. Alex Orji, Davis Warren, Jack Tuttle, guys that have been within this Michigan program for the last couple of years, all three of them don't look like starting caliber quarterbacks. And so if you're Sherrone Moore, I think you have to first take a look at Kirk Campbell as the offensive coordinator, but also the quarterback coach, and say, is Kirk Campbell the right man for the job? And I know this is kind of a harsh, negative episode from the boys here. I don't know if there's any other spin that you can put on this performance. I mean, I think there's a lot of people who are within this Michigan program that you need to take a look at if they're the right guys for the job. And I think it starts with Sherrone Moore. It certainly starts with Kirk Campbell. I'd also argue, Ron Bellamy. Jack Tuttle completed 20 passes in this football game. Over 13 of those passes went to tight ends. And you look at Jack Tuttle, and a lot of times he's dropping back and saying, he's talking the ball. I don't think there's a ton of separation that's being created. And I think a lot of y'all are right, because we've kind of had this conversation about, just how good are these Michigan wide receivers. I think it's really difficult to kind of evaluate with how bad the quarterback play is. But, I mean, we can kind of count on one hand throughout the first 7 games of the season, wide receivers making plays for Michigan. I mean, I think they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, but when's the last time we've seen a wide receiver do something like Cornelius Johnson or Roman Wilson did for this offense back in 2023? I think Ron Bellamy, it starts on the recruiting trail. Like, we know we're not bringing in the top end wide receivers from the high school ranks. And then you couple that with development that doesn't really seem to be taking place within this Michigan program at the wide receiver spot. It's a problem. And I think a little bit's on Kirk Campbell and some of the passing concepts that we see just not get putting these guys in good positions. But I think it's secondly, there's not a lot of wide receivers that are winning their one-on-ones and going out and making play for quarterbacks. When you have that, when you have bad quarterback play, when you have wide receivers who are not making plays, that's kind of the offense that you get from Michigan. Not even argue that the offensive line development hasn't been very good. I mean, we knew we were replacing our top 6 offensive linemen from the 2023 season, but a lot of these cats who are playing were highly sought after kids coming from the high school ranks who have been within this Michigan program for quite a long time. I don't think they're in the run game. It's all too ugly, but in pass protection, I mean, we saw what Evan Link was. He obviously didn't play today. We saw what Jeff Percy is. Not very good. Without Miles Hinton, who's really the only reliable offensive tackle that we have, I think we figured out why Andrew Gentry wasn't playing a little bit more to begin with. The offensive line play, specifically at the offensive tackle spot, it's also been a problem. And so you look at this offense in general and say, yeah, the quarterback position, it's struggling. The offensive coordinator and the structure of this offense is not very good. You don't have playmakers on the outside who seem to be getting developed, and the offensive line struggling in pass pro. There's not a single redeeming quality outside of Kalel Mullings running the football and Colson Loveland that you see within this Michigan program. If you're sure, and we're going to have a lot of these conversations in the offseason, I expect to see, probably a lot of changes with Sherrone Moore and how he runs this program and kind of what staff is in place. You look at Michigan heading into 2024. They weren't that aggressive in the transfer portal, right? They added a few wide receivers that weren't necessarily proven difference makers at their previous schools, guys like CJ Charleston or Marion Walker. Like, when they came to Michigan, we were like, all right, we're excited to add some bodies into the wide receiver room, but we kind of knew they weren't difference makers. Didn't add a quarterback. There wasn't a ton of aggression from Sherrone Moore in the transfer portal, which I think has a lot of Michigan fans kind of scratching their heads. We knew we'd have to replace a lot of guys. Was Sherrone Moore looking at last year's practice and this year's fall or spring practice and saying, hey, we feel good about the talent level? Because I think that's certainly a problem in terms of the evaluation that Sherrone Moore had of this Michigan team. Now, you look on the defensive side of the football, I know I've been, maybe hard at times with Wink Martindale. I don't think certainly the problem was on defense. You take a look at Illinois, only 18 first downs, only 267 yards of total offense. You tell me Illinois only has 18 first downs and 267 yards of total offense. I'm telling you Michigan won by 2 scores with a serviceable offense, which Michigan doesn't have. I thought you saw some young talent for the defense start to step up, which I think is exciting for Michigan fans because we're losing a lot of talent this year to the NFL draft as well. There's a lot that needs to be fixed, and I want to have the conversation about Jadyn Davis. There's a couple of different arguments that you can have with Jadyn Davis. Now, the personal argument that I agree with here is let Jadyn Davis play and let's see what this kid can do. Because right now, none of these 3 quarterbacks that we saw play for Michigan so far are going to be your starter in 2025. If that's the case, there's going to be some problems. Why not let Jadyn Davis take over this Michigan offense and just give him an opportunity to show if he's a guy that you can build with heading into 2025 and get your answer? Because that answer is going to be very important, because when you go into this offseason, the quarterback position is going to be the number one priority to get right. We want to know if we have our starting quarterback in 2025 on this roster, and the only guy that possibly could be it is Jadyn Davis. So my personal take is let this kid play. Let's see what he can do as a true freshman. Let's see if he can show us, something that we can build on heading into 2025. And the argument not to play Jadyn Davis is I don't think this offense is very good. And so you kind of run the risk of just throwing him out with a shoddy offensive line with not a ton of difference makers on the outside. You're kind of putting that kid in the position to not really be successful, which you don't really want to do with a young quarterback. So I kind of understand, keeping Jadyn Davis on the shelf, letting him redshirt, come into 2025 with kind of a fresh start going into this. But I think then the question is, you certainly need to go to the transfer portal, because I don't think you want to hitch your wagon to Jadyn Davis and true freshman Carter Smith in 2025. Michigan's got a lot to figure out. I think it starts with the coaching staff. I think it starts with on the recruiting trail and player development. We'll see. It's going to be a busy offseason for Michigan. There's a lot of work that needs to be done from a Michigan fan's perspective. Would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. Very frustrating Saturday for the fellas. We'll cut it there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.